This is Life is Meant to be Lived, a podcast about reimagining struggle, finding purpose in the hard moments, and choosing to fully live. Inspired by chronic illness, but made for everyone who's ever faced something hard. Because no matter what you're facing, life is meant to be lived. All right, everyone, welcome to Life is Meant to be Lived, the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today, and I'm really excited for this episode. I've been wanting to have Desiree Ferrin on for a minute now, and schedules haven't lined up, and so I've been looking forward to this so much. Today, we are privileged to hear from Desiree Ferrin. She is someone who has relentlessly turned one of the hardest experiences of her life into a mission to bless thousands of others. She graduated with a master's in special education, but following a life-threatening experience, Desiree has dedicated herself to improving maternal health care and ensuring that women and families never have to face difficult circumstances alone. Today, she serves as the birth trauma patient advocate for the Utah Women and Newborn Quality Collaborative. Is a certified patient family partner and serves on the Intermountain Health Patient Advisory Council. She regularly advocates for mothers on both the state and national level, working with healthcare leaders to improve patient safety and compassionate care. Desiree's voice reaches far beyond hospitals and boardrooms. She has been published in outlets including the Salt Lake Tribune, uses social media to inspire and educate thousands, and is known as a thoughtful, courageous advocate who lifts others through kindness, hope, and truth. More than any title she holds, Desiree is someone who believes that our greatest trials can become our greatest opportunities to reflect and serve. So thank you. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. All right. Will you just start by kind of telling everybody kind of like your story? What happened to you so that we have a better basis of, how you're able to turn this really awful thing into something that's, helping and blessing thousands of people?
Yeah. So I have 3 babies. I have a daughter who's 15. I have a son who's 12. And then I have a 7-year-old. And I've always believed that birth is magic. It's this moment when the spirit enters this little room and you get to meet this person you've been anticipating for months. And I love family there. I think it's great. I've had my mother-in-law, my husband, my sister, my parents are always there. And I just think it's really cool. And I have been lucky to be naive enough to know that, or to think that nothing goes wrong during deliveries. I now know that it is one of the most vulnerable times of a woman's life. But at the time, I always thought, what could go wrong? I'm having a birth in the hospital. I've got great doctors, great nurses. But with the birth of my 3rd baby, I had some retained placenta when she came. We had to have it manually extracted, which is when they have to go in and take it out. And it's painful and you do bleed. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that was my crazy war story. As women, we love to share our birth. And so I was like, well, I got a good one. Took us some time. My body was kind of reacting to the experience. And, a couple hours later, I was back in the room holding my baby and I thought, weird. That's it. We're moving on. And I didn't recover well after that delivery. And because it was my 3rd, I knew what it was supposed to look like. And I kept having bleeding. We don't talk about bleeding enough. It's something that as women, we kind of shy away from it. We're embarrassed. And I think that's a problem because we do need to talk about what's normal, what's not. And so I was too afraid to say hey, is this normal to somebody? So I just kind of kept it to myself. I would Google, which Googling while you're nursing a baby at 2 a.m. is a terrible idea because you're getting other people's opinions. You're not getting medical advice. So I just kind of thought, well, maybe it's normal. I don't know. But I would stop and start and I would just think I'm doing too much. I need to slow down. But I had 2 other children and I just this is just where I am in life. But right around week 5, I was continuing to bleed pretty heavily. So I went in and I talked to my sister and I was like, hey, is this normal? And she was like, no, but I don't know. She's like, call your doctor. So I did. And I loved my provider. But he was like, why don't you come in? And so I did. And he went in and said, oh my gosh, you've got a silver dollar sized piece of retained placenta. It has to come out. And he said, you're lucky. Usually we find these in a hemorrhage or an infection. And he's like, you've kind of just been walking around with a time bomb, but you're fine. So let's get it taken care of. We'll do a DNC tomorrow morning. My husband was out of town. It was my husband's pilot. So it was his first trip back to work, and he's like, do I come home? And I was like, no, this is not a big deal. I don't need you to come home. I just, I can't be awake with the baby tonight. And I was actually kind of excited because I was so tired from getting up at night. And so I was like, you're going to have to be up all night with the baby. I'll have anesthetic in my system, so it's going to be you. So he's like, well, I'll come home later that day. And it was not a big deal in my mind. I just thought, this is what I need to do to feel better. And so at that appointment, my mom took me, and I remember nursing the baby, handing her to my mom, and my mom being like, okay, so when you wake up, it'll be about, and after it's all out, you'll be probably time to nurse her, and it'll be good to go. And when I woke up, my mom was like, you've been gone forever. And I was like, no, it's like a 25-minute procedure. I've had them before. And she's like, no, you've been gone a long time. And the doctor walked in and he said, you hemorrhaged on my table. He said, I did everything I could to stop it. He seems like it looks like you're stable now, but you are going to stay here all day. We're going to give you they give you Methergin shots, which are intramuscular shots to contract your uterus. And he's like, I've given you a couple of those, and then we're going to keep you all day on Pitocin, which I was like, well, that's a bummer. Pitocin's painful. Well, it can be. And I was like, I gave birth 6 weeks ago. I shouldn't be, like, why am I still doing this medication? So we stayed all day. Everything got under control. He sent me home and put me on an oral medication I had to take every 3 hours. And we did that for 4 days and everything stopped. And we just thought, okay, well, there you go. Again, I have a weird birth story and we can go about living our lives. And it was a week to the day. I was nursing my baby outside. My kids, we had just put a yard in, and my other two were jumping on a trampoline. And I was watching them and I was like, oh my gosh, I just peed my pants. And I was like, I've never done that. Even pregnant. And I was like, that's embarrassing. And I stood up and I was like, oh, I'm bleeding. I didn't pee. And so I called the doctor, called my husband. And it was interesting because my doctor was like on his way home from the airport. And he was like, that's weird. My flights were all messed up. I'm home a day early. It's good that I'm here. And he's like, let's get you back on the oral Methergin. And then if you have any problems during the night, he's like, just call me and I'll go right in to see you. So my husband and I were kind of preparing for a wild night. I remember like calling my mother-in-law and dropping my other two kids off just in case something happened and we needed to go to the hospital. But I woke up in the morning and everything had stopped, and I felt kind of like a drama queen because I'd called and been like, oh my gosh, what a weenie I am. But in the morning, my OB texted me and said, how'd the night go? You didn't call me. And I was like, it's fine. And he's like, well, I still want to see you. Come in. Anytime you have this morning is good. He's like, you don't need an appointment. Just let them know you're here. So I was like, well, let me shower, nurse the baby, and I'll come down. And I remember walking in my bathroom. I have my closet and it's connected to the bathroom, and I had my clothes hamper on one end and then the shower's on the other end of the wall. So I was, like 20 feet from where it was. And from where I put my clothes in the hamper to when I was walking to the bathroom or the shower, it was a murder scene. There was so much blood. And my husband came in and was like, we're going to the ER now. And I was like, no, wait, we need to go. We can just go directly to the doctor. He's already waiting. And he's like, well, whatever we do, he's like, you're going to call. His name is Wes, the doctor. And he's like, you're going to call Wes and see what he thinks. So he said, just come to me. He's like, be prepared to probably spend the day in the hospital, but just come directly to me. So we drove down and I got there and I'm like, again, everything has stopped. I feel like such a drama queen. I get there and I remember telling my husband, I'm kind of hungry. And he was like, well, do you want breakfast or he's like, I want sushi. And I was like, well, I want pancakes. And it was just such like a mundane, like a dumb conversation. But it was like, we just didn't know what was about to hit us. Like we just assumed we'd be a couple hours and then we'd be on our way. We didn't know. And when I got into the doctor's office, I remember sitting in the chair, waiting for him to come in. And I remember thinking like, oh, there's water splashing. I'm hearing the sound of like splattering. And he had come in and he was doing an ultrasound and he's like, that's a really angry uterus. And at the time, that didn't mean anything to me. And he's like, he sits me up, and I remember like where I said, is there a sink on? Or is it leaking somewhere? And he said, no, that's you. And I looked down and it was just pouring down the table. And the interesting thing about hemorrhages for a postpartum hemorrhage is they're not really painful. You're just bleeding. And so I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I just knew that it was pretty serious. And I remember looking at him, and we'd been through years of infertility. I had seen this man for years. I knew him well. And he's never been ruffled before in front of me. And he starts saying, how do you feel about a hysterectomy? And I was like, really bad. We are not done having babies. I'd love to have more. But he's like, I just need you to wrap your head around that. And I was like, I remember thinking, I'm going to go to the hospital. My husband's going to give me a blessing. We're going to get to the hospital. And bad things don't happen in hospitals. I will be fine. I'll be there. The nurses will take care of me. He'll get it under control. Like, I had so much trust in him. And I remember him saying, I'm going to call an ambulance. And I was like, no, they're so expensive. Don't call an ambulance. But he's like, I'm going to call in the hospital right now. I'm going to get you a bed. You're going to go to the 4th floor. He's like, I just need my phone. And I remember him like yelling at the assistant to go downstairs to get a bunch of like the giant pads. And I'm like laughing with the assistant because I'm like, these are ridiculous. And I'm like, they're like, it's just such a mess. And I remember I was alone in the room for 2 seconds, and I was like, oh, I don't feel very good. And I sat down and slumped over, and he ran in and was like, get up. Like, you can't fall asleep. He's like, I'm calling the hospital. And he's like, I just need to find, and he's swearing. He's like, I can't find the damn phones. And I was like, you've got them in your hands. Like, you've got your cell phone in one hand and the office phone in the other. And I remember thinking, I'm in trouble. Like, he's panicked. So we left. We went immediately there. I couldn't get a hold of my parents, couldn't get a hold of my family. I did get a hold of my sister, and I was like, hey, I just need someone to know what's going on so that, and she's like, are you like, what do I need to do? I'm like, I don't know yet. And I remember she's like, you're not making sense. And my husband's like, I got to hang up. I was losing coherent. I was beginning to become incoherent. And we got to the front of the ER because they told us to go to the ER. They'll give me a wheelchair and they'll walk me up. Because I was like, if I walk myself up to the 4th floor, I'm going to leave a trail of blood. So they said, go to the ER bay. They dropped me off. My husband dropped me off. He was going to go park the car. And I remember telling the nurse, oh, I have a room on the 4th floor. I just need a wheelchair. And she's like, you're not going anywhere. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm going to the 4th floor. And that's when I lost consciousness. And I don't remember really anything after. I know I woke up in one of the big trauma bays. There were 3 doctors in the room. I had tons of nurses. And now I know that that's when you have that many people in the room, it's because it's pretty serious. I just could not stay conscious, and they were doing everything they could. They started blood, they started fluids. I had to lay in Trendelenburg in order to keep myself conscious. Anytime they laid me flat, I'd go back out. And I remember them just yelling at me, you have to stay awake. You have to fight for this baby. I just couldn't. It'd start to go black, and I would do everything I could. It would start to scare me, but I would just lose myself to it each time. And so eventually the decision was made that an emergency hysterectomy was the only way to save my life. And I signed consent for everything. I don't really quite remember. I remember kind of trying to joke around because I was so afraid and asking them like I remember the nurse saying, okay, so you're signing a consent for a vertical. So you're going to go straight up your stomach. And I was like, I don't really want that. Could you just scope it? And she's like, no. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, I'll just text Wes. He'll just scope me. And I remember texting him and saying, whatever you got to do, just make me look good. Feel free to do like a little tummy tuck. And I'm sure he was like, are you nuts? But it was not, I wasn't aware enough to realize like this was as serious as it was. And I remember one of the nurses, when I was like, I don't want a hysterectomy, I was going to trick you into one more. I said that to my husband. I remember one of the nurses, like her little shoulders kind of sobbed a little. And I remember thinking like, why would she be crying? And my brother-in-law works in the ER as one of the doctors. And later he said, she thought we were sending a mother up to die. Like, she's like, the amount of blood you lost, nobody thought you were going to survive. But as they were walking me down, I remember begging them, like, hey, I finally got a hold of my parents. My dad was rushing to me so he could give a blessing with my husband. And they said, I remember, like, he'll be here in 30 minutes. And the nurse said, you don't have 30 minutes. And so they wheeled me out, and my husband and I were so shocked. And he had a front row seat. He could see how serious it was. But he just started to disassociate. He was like, just so, what is happening? And he had the baby. And the nurse said to us, you need to say your goodbye. He said, you need to say your goodbyes. And so he was like, bye. And he walked away. And the nurse said, no, you need to say your goodbyes. And that's when we realized, like, that's when it hit me. I have to tell him everything I need him to know for a lifetime. Like, take my oldest to get a pedicure every birthday. In the closet, I write letters to my kids every year. This is where they are. And like, I love you. Thank you for loving me. Like, it was so much. And we left. And I remember I was losing so much blood at this point that it's like the most, I can't even describe the nausea from it. You're spinning, you're so sick, and they're telling you to stop throwing up because you're forcing out more blood, but you can't stop. And the room is buzzing, and they're working frantically. And I was waiting. I was like, can I wait for my doctor? And the anesthesiologist was very sweet. And I just had him for when I had my baby. And I was like, please, can we wait for my doctor? And he said, honey, I have some really awful things I have to do to prep you for surgery because I needed to have additional support lines. And he said, I'm sorry, you don't want to be awake and I have to start them now. And so I just told the room, please wait. There's a baby that won't know her mother. Please bring your A game. Like, I'm begging you. There are 2 little kids at home who have to have me. And that's it. I remember, I remember waking up and being like, what just happened? And it took some time. And I spent time in an ICU and I spent time at the hospital, and I needed several units of blood. It was a pretty intense recovery, one that I didn't think I would have to do right after having a newborn. I mean, that's the hard part, is you have this major experience and you're still getting up every 2 hours with the baby. And I was really, because I knew it was my last at that point, I really wanted to nurse her, and I didn't think I'd be able to. They told me you won't be able to with this kind of blood loss. But I was able, for some miracle, able to continue, and good or bad, that meant I was up all night. And the recovery was hard. And I spent a summer in my recliner, but I had an incredible community that sat with me, and my kids had the best summer of their lives because they were picked up every day and taken to lagoon and swimming and just movies and really fun things. And we had meals and fun things. And it was just, I got better quickly because of the support that I had. I mean, it was still a long recovery. I mean, it took months before I stopped blacking out when I stood up, but I had people in my court. And it's like these kind of moments where you realize just how loved you are. And it was really, really lovely to see the people who will show up for you, people that I didn't even really quite know, that were like in other parts of our little community saying, hey, I just heard, what can I do? Can I bring you groceries? Or I would, my husband would open the door and there'd be new things on my porch for my kids, or just really great. Our lawn was mowed by somebody from North Fork multiple times. They just showed up and did it. It was just kindness. You realize just how good people are. So that's kind of our story. But what kind of changed it into my catalyst was I didn't know what to do with it. Like you go through these experiences and they're really overwhelming and big, and it just sat on me, and I was like, okay, well, now what? And that's kind of what turned everything over for me into where I got into advocacy and into public health. So,
yeah, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's pretty insane. And I'm thankful you're here and able to advocate. That's really crazy. My question for you is, why advocacy? I guess you could have done a lot of other things with it, right? You could have, there's a million paths to make a difference in the world. Why was advocacy like your calling?
I think for me, I needed to make sense of what had happened. And so in that path, like I realized I wasn't okay. And I realized, and postpartum for mothers or for women is really hard regardless. And, the number one complication from birth is a postpartum mental health, like a perinatal mental health disorder. And we don't talk about it enough. But then when you add in the layer of trauma, it was more than I could cope with. And so I wasn't who I was. I wasn't who I wanted to be as a wife or as a mother. And so as I got further down the path, I had a really great therapist. And that took time to find because they're not always the right fit for the first time you meet somebody. And she encouraged me to kind of seek out more support. But at the time, I also felt like I had no relationship with God anymore. I felt like he had hung me out to dry. And I was like, well, why would you give me this horrible trial? And after years and years of infertility, I felt like I had, like, now you're giving permanent infertility? Like, this is a really unfair thing. It's a righteous desire. And so she said to me, it's okay to be mad at God. And that was like, oh, like I always thought you can't be. And she's like, he could take it. It's okay to be mad. And so I knelt down and I prayed and I was really angry and I was yelling and my family was gone. And I felt this like, I cried in secret for months, because I didn't want anyone to know that I was struggling. And I felt like if I complained, I was being ungrateful and what I now know is that most, in my situation, people don't, like when you're that severe at that timing, people don't survive. And so I felt like I didn't have the right to complain or be like, I felt like I was just being a wiener and I needed to get over it. But I laid it all out there and it was the first time I did. And I remember a very distinct impression that was just like, are you done? Because I need you to fight. And it was like, oh, I'm being chastised. Okay, I guess I need to, okay, I am done. Okay, what? And then it was like, well, what do you want me to do with this? And I had found a few late night searches, which I don't always agree. I think that's the right thing. Sometimes you can find the wrong parts of the internet at 2 a.m. But I just happened to find it was a maternal near miss survivors group. And it was other women who across the country had been in experiences like this. It's increasing in the US. We're finding more and more women are suffering birth trauma. But these extreme traumas are increasing. Because of this, there are more of us out there. And so I found these women and they had a once a year conference and it was right after COVID. And so they hadn't met in person for a couple of years. And I remember like, I don't know if I should go. Maybe this isn't worth it. And last minute, I was like, you know what? Fine. What's the harm? I'm going to go. And this is where I found my people. And they were the ones who understood and got it. Because I remember people would say to me, oh, I had a similar experience or I almost died too. And I was like, did your heart stop? Like, it wasn't the same, right? Like people say that to me all the time. And I just have to say, oh, I'm so sorry you had a similar experience. But no one really understood it except for these women who did have a similar experience. And while I was there, they were like, your story is really impactful. And I was listening to what they were doing and there was nothing in Utah at the time. And so I was invited to come teach a couple of years later to teach hospital systems and to teach state perinatal quality collaboratives, which are the quality improvement portion of maternal health in the US. And while I was there teaching, Utah was there. And there was this incredible woman who is now my boss. And she was like, can I take you to lunch? And I was like, that would be great. I'd love to meet you. She's like, I'd just love to hear what you would like to do. And she asked me, what's the one thing you would change about women who experience birth trauma in the state of Utah? And I said, I would like to see if we could bridge the gap between birth trauma and maternal mental health because there isn't anything there. And my OB tried to help me find people. I tried to find people and it was kind of a journey. And she's like, okay, well, I've got some funding. Let's get it going. And I was like, oh, wait, you mean me? Like, I have to do this? I just thought I was giving you an idea. And she's like, yeah, let's get it done. And Utah is the only state in the country that is working on birth trauma. Most perinatal quality collaboratives are working with they're kind of they're focusing on the babies, and we should be focusing on babies. But as far as focusing on mothers and trauma, we're kind of leading the pack. And as far as I know, we're the only state in the country that has hired a patient voice or a patient advocate in this specific range. And then we are now working on a program to connect other mothers who've experienced it. And so we've been writing the curriculum for that and getting them going so that you go through these experiences and you're so isolated. It's the most, like nobody understood me. People tried, but nobody could help. And for me, I just don't want any other mother to feel that kind of lonely. And so that's what we're working on. And that's how I got involved in this maternal mental health sphere. So
wow, you kind of got just chucked into the deep end on the maternal mental health. It wasn't even, but yeah. I think it's really cool that because there is a gap there. I've been struggling with some doctors of mine lately and stuff, and there's just a gap between patient and doctors, and there's nothing you can do to bridge that except for people like you that are patient advocates and can kind of work with both. What do you think kind of the biggest challenge between patient advocacy and kind of mending that gap between patients and their doctors? And what do you think the biggest challenge there is? And I guess what do you work on the most with that?
Oh, I think there's a lot of things that play into it. But I think the most part is, as a doctor, you have a 15-minute window to get me through my appointment, get me through, get it done, especially for maternal mental health. That first use, it's weird because we go through pregnancy and we have so many appointments, and then we have a baby, which is a huge experience on our body. Come back one time and then we're like sent out into the wild. And in that appointment, you have 15 minutes to make sure she's okay. She's got to make sure you're getting birth control, any questions that she may have, how, check, make sure she's healed enough. It's just not enough time. And the reality is maternal mental health isn't their scope. And so helping them understand that, hey, we're not, you're doing a good job. You're doing a really good job. But sometimes healthcare isn't binary. As far as when a mother goes through an experience like this, we think, oh, she's healed. Check, we can move on. We're not thinking about she's physically healed. We're not thinking about emotionally. And that just isn't in their scope. And it's hard for them because my OB has told me since then how traumatic that was for him and how heavy that was and how that sat on him and how scared he was. And he has to process. And so for him, it's easier to just didn't happen. But when we, understanding that you don't have to have the answers and there are programs out there. It's interesting because I was just seeing a different doctor a couple weeks ago, and I saw my flyer in the doctor's office, but it was up so high on the wall, and I was like, I'm 5'6", and I don't think I could even reach that flyer. And I was like, oh, hey, and my picture's on the flyer, so I was like, hey, that's me. And she was like, oh, that is. I've never given that out. It was like, do you realize the gold mine that's sitting at your hands? You don't have to figure it out. You just have them scan that code, helping them understand that the resources are there. It's not your responsibility. We have programs within the state that are willing to take that on for you. And we have some really, really phenomenal doctors who we work with who are champions for us and we're champions for them, who, for the most part, want all that. And even the doctor I just saw, she was just like, I didn't even know about this program. I just know that they put a flyer in my office. She was like, you know how many women come to me? She's like, all I deal with is maternal mental health, but I didn't know this was even available. I was like, well, let me tell you about our website and our maternal mental health resource page. And people just don't know. And I think that's the biggest issue, is just getting information out there.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Not on the same level. You have a lot more experience than me, but I feel like I even will constantly learn about like CF related programs, and I'm like, this has
Yes.
been around for forever, and I'm just hearing about this. Like, this is crazy. Okay, well, I have one more question to
Okay.
kind of finish this out. Number one, what's your website for those resources for anybody listening that's like, I really want I want this. Like, where can
Yeah.
they go? And then number two, what's like one piece of advice you would give someone that feels really isolated and really alone right now? What's something you would tell them to kind of, help them get out of that and just, what would you tell them? What's your number one advice for that?
Okay. So first, we are birthtrauma.utah.gov. And my contact information is in there. It's a really great website. It has information for families supporting a mother who's experienced this, for mothers, and it's broken down by the condition. And so if you know ahead of time, like I had preeclampsia and that caused my trauma. For me, I had a placenta accreta, and that's where I could go. There's a lot of information, a lot of great things. My information is also in there. For part of my job, if there's a mother who's struggling, I listen. So if you need someone to talk to, we can connect you to me, or we're starting to train other mothers who can also take that on, and so that you won't feel so alone. But birthtrauma.utah.gov, it's a great one. It also has like some maternal mental health resources. It can help you find providers that are covered by your insurance in your area. But when I get to sit with a mother who's experienced these, and I've seen so many different like levels of shock and the way you're in reactions. And the best thing I can say is you'll be happy again. It does. You will get over this. Not get over, because you never get over it. You will be happy again. It gets better. But we need to get you through it. And so it's that like warm handoff for me of like, I promise you, you will be okay. And you will have a new normal. But that normal can be really, really great. And if someone had told me that in the darkest dark for me, I wouldn't have believed them. But I didn't know anybody who'd survived it. And so that just having somebody reach out and say, hey, you've got this, and I'm here, and you're going to be okay, and I'm going to help you get there. I think that is, and again, if anyone's listening and needs that, birthtrauma.utah.gov or dferrin at utah.gov, I'm more than happy to listen to anytime, because that is what brings me the most healing. And my whole experience is knowing that like what I went through, because I've done national and I've done state level campaigns, and what we're trying to do, we're hoping to present it nationally. And I think often those really dark, like the darkest days of crying on my shower floor, because if I cried in the shower, nobody could hear me cry. If I knew what my experience is changing the landscape for other mothers, I would do it in a heartbeat. Like I just didn't know what was coming. And your experiences can be the same. I'm not special. I'm just bossy, and I knew I wanted more. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Desiree. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for taking a little time out of your busy, busy schedule, helping others to be here and to advocate to, kind of my platform. So thankful to have you. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thank you. What you're doing is just as incredible. You're doing great work.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here and for listening to Life is Meant to be Lived. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone you love. Until next time, keep reimagining struggle, keep choosing hope, and remember, no matter what you're facing, life is meant to be lived.